Unexpected reunion. The fluorescent lights of Memorial General Hospital buzzed overhead as Dr. Marcus Delaney finished suturing a laceration on a teenager's arm. Rain lashed against the windows, punctuating the typical emergency room symphony of beeping monitors and hushed conversations. At 34, Marcus had become something of a fixture in the ER, respected, reliable, and renowned for his steady hands even during the most chaotic traumas. "All set, Jason. Keep it dry for 48 hours, then follow up with your primary care doctor next week," Marcus said, peeling off his gloves and offering a reassuring smile to the teen and his worried mother. As they left, Marcus glanced at his watch, 3:17 a.m. 4 more hours until his shift ended. He rolled his shoulders to release the tension that had built up during the 12-hour marathon. The night had been relentless. 3 car accidents, an elderly man with chest pain, and a continuous stream of minor emergencies. "Dr. Delaney, they need a consult in maternity," Nurse Patel said, appearing at his side with a chart. "High-risk delivery, mother with preeclampsia, BP's climbing despite medication." Marcus frowned. "Maternity isn't my department. Where's Dr. Hernandez?" "Tied up with an emergency C-section. They specifically asked for you." "That's odd," Marcus muttered, taking the chart. The patient's name made his heart stop. Olivia Winters, 32. The clipboard nearly slipped from his fingers. Olivia. It had been 18 months since she'd walked out of his life without explanation, leaving only a hastily written note about needing space and not being ready for what they had. For weeks afterward, he'd called her number to hear only the automated message that the line had been disconnected. Her social media accounts had vanished. It was as if she'd evaporated from his life, leaving only questions and a hollow ache that coffee and overnight shifts couldn't fill. Marcus walked to the elevator in a daze, mind racing. Olivia was here, in his hospital, in labor. The 6th floor was quieter than the ER, but tension hung in the air as he approached the nurse's station. "I'm here for the Winters consult," he said, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. A nurse looked up. "Room 614. Her condition is stabilizing, but Dr. Fernandez wanted another set of eyes." Marcus nodded mechanically and walked down the hallway, his footsteps echoing against the polished floor. Outside room 614, he paused, drawing a deep breath. Through the small window in the door, he could see a woman with auburn hair spread across the pillow, her face turned away. "Dr. Delaney?" A voice startled him. He turned to see a midwife emerging from an adjacent room. "Thank goodness you're here. She's been asking for you." "Asking for me?" Marcus repeated, confused. The midwife nodded, lowering her voice. "She was quite insistent when she arrived. Said you needed to be here, because you're the father." The world seemed to tilt beneath Marcus's feet. "That's impossible," he whispered. "We haven't seen each other in—" He quickly calculated. 18 months. Well, she's at 38 weeks, so the timing— The midwife left the sentence unfinished, her expression sympathetic. Before Marcus could respond, a cry of pain came from within the room. Professional instinct took over, and he pushed through the door. Olivia's eyes met his, wide with pain and something else. Fear? Relief? Her face was flushed, hair damp with sweat, but she was still beautiful in the way that had always made his chest ache. "Marcus," she gasped between contractions. "You came." "Olivia," he managed, moving closer to the bed. "What's happening? They said—" She grabbed his hand with surprising strength. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you. But there's no time now." Another contraction seized her, and she squeezed his fingers until they went numb. "The baby," she said when she could speak again. "Our baby. He's coming." Whispers of the past Marcus stood frozen beside Olivia's hospital bed, her words echoing in his mind like thunder. "Our baby." The medical monitor beeped steadily, counting the seconds of his stunned silence. "How is this possible?" he finally managed, his voice barely audible above the storm raging outside. Lightning briefly illuminated the room, casting harsh shadows across Olivia's pained face. Dr. Fernandez entered before she could answer, clipboard in hand. "Blood pressure's stabilizing, but we're not out of the woods. We need to monitor both, mother and baby, closely." She glanced between them, sensing the tension. "Dr. Delaney, a word outside?" In the hallway, Marcus leaned against the wall, running his hands through his dark hair. "I had no idea," he told his colleague. "None." "I gathered that from your expression," Dr. Fernandez replied gently. "Look, whatever's happening between you two, right now she needs medical care. Can you be professional about this?" Marcus straightened, offended. "Of course. I'm fine." "Good. Because her labor is progressing quickly, and with the preeclampsia, concerns we might need all hands on deck." Back in the room, Olivia was breathing through another contraction. When it passed, her eyes found his. Those same hazel eyes that used to crinkle at the corners when she laughed, now filled with apprehension. "You disappeared," Marcus said quietly, checking her IV line out of habit. 18 months ago. Not a word except that note." Olivia winced. "I know. I owe you so many explanations." "You're damn right you do." The words came out harsher than intended. Marcus took a steadying breath. "Why now? Why here?" "I was visiting my grandmother in Chicago when my water broke," she explained. "The ambulance brought me to the closest hospital. I didn't know you worked here until I saw your name on the staff directory at reception." She paused. "But then it felt like fate." Marcus scoffed. "Fate? You vanished from my life without explanation, apparently pregnant with my child, and now fate brought you here?" Memories flooded back unbidden. Olivia in his kitchen making pancakes on Sunday mornings. The way she'd curl against him during thunderstorms like the one raging outside now. Her passionate arguments about social justice, over dinner with friends, the life they'd been building, the ring he'd hidden in his desk drawer. Another contraction interrupted, stronger this time. Marcus instinctively moved to her side, offering his hand. She took it gratefully. "I was scared," she admitted afterward, her voice small. "When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. You were just starting your fellowship, working 100-hour weeks. We'd talked about maybe having kids someday, in the abstract, but this was real and happening now. So you decided for both of us, without even talking to me?" Marcus felt the old anger rising again. It wasn't just that. Olivia looked away. "Remember that job offer in Portland? The one working with at-risk youth that I turned down to stay with you in Chicago?" Marcus nodded. They'd argued about it for weeks, her dream job versus their relationship. They called again with an even better position. Director of a new program for teenage mothers. It was everything I'd worked toward. She met his eyes. "I convinced myself you'd resent me if I stayed and asked you to become a father before you were ready. Or worse, that you'd resent our child." "You had no right to make that decision," Marcus said, the hurt evident in his voice. "No right to keep this from me. I know that now," she whispered. "But by the time I realized my mistake, months had passed. I was showing. I'd moved across the country. And I was too proud, too ashamed to reach out." The monitor began beeping more rapidly. Olivia's face contorted in pain as another contraction hit, stronger than before. Marcus checked the readout, his doctor instincts taking over. "They're getting closer," he said, pressing the call button. 3 minutes apart now." As nurses hurried in to check Olivia's progress, Marcus stepped back, watching the woman he once planned to spend his life with prepare to deliver a child he hadn't known existed until tonight. Through the window, lightning illuminated the Chicago skyline, the city where they'd met, fallen in love, and now found themselves connected in a way neither could have anticipated. Dr. Fernandez returned, snapping on gloves. "You're at 8 centimeters, Olivia. It won't be long now." She glanced at Marcus. "Are you staying?" The question hung in the air between them. Olivia didn't look at him, giving him the space to leave if he chose. Marcus thought of the remaining hours in his shift, the patients in the ER, the paperwork on his desk. Then he thought of missing the birth of his child. "I'm staying," he said firmly, moving to Olivia's side. Whatever lay between them, the hurt, the betrayal, the unanswered questions, could wait. Right now, a new life was about to enter the world. His child. Their child. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside room 614, time seemed suspended as they awaited the moment that would forever change both their lives. First breaths. "Push, Olivia. That's it. One more big one." The delivery room buzzed with focused energy as Dr. Fernandez coached from the foot of the bed. Monitors beeped, nurses moved efficiently around the space, and outside, the storm had reached its crescendo, rain hammering against the windows like impatient fingers. Marcus stood at Olivia's side, his hand nearly crushed in her grip. For the past hour, he'd been both doctor and expectant father, checking vitals, interpreting monitor readings while simultaneously experiencing the raw, primal fear of watching someone he once loved struggle through labor. "I can't," Olivia gasped, falling back against the pillows. Sweat plastered her auburn hair to her forehead, and tears streaked her flushed face. "Marcus, I can't do this." He leaned closer. "Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know, remember? The woman who hiked the entire Pacific Crest Trail on a broken ankle because she was too stubborn to quit." A weak smile flickered across her face at the memory. "That was different." "Same Olivia," he insisted, wiping her brow with a cool cloth. "Same determination." The next contraction built rapidly. Marcus watched the monitor, then nodded. "This is it. You've got this." Olivia bore down with renewed strength, a guttural cry escaping her lips as she pushed. Marcus held his breath, watching as Dr. Fernandez guided the baby's head. "Shoulders coming, that's it. One more push, Olivia." With a final tremendous effort, Olivia pushed, and suddenly, the room filled. With a new sound, the indignant, powerful cry of a newborn taking his first breath. "It's a boy!" Dr. Fernandez announced, lifting the squirming, vernix-covered infant. "A beautiful, healthy boy." Time seemed to stop for Marcus. The baby, his son, was red-faced and angry, tiny fists clenched as he protested his abrupt entry into the bright, cold world. A shock of dark hair, still damp, covered his head. Marcus's hair. "Would you like to cut the cord, Dad?" Dr. Fernandez asked, offering him surgical scissors. The word "Dad" hit Marcus like a physical blow. With trembling hands, he took the scissors and cut where indicated, separating mother and child for the first time. A nurse whisked the baby away to be weighed and measured, while another helped Olivia through the delivery of the placenta. Marcus found himself torn between staying with Olivia and following his son. "Go," Olivia said softly, noting his divided attention. "Go meet him." At the warming table, the nurse was wrapping the now-cleaned baby in a blanket. 7 pounds, 9 ounces, 19 inches long. Perfect APGAR scores, she reported. "Would you like to hold him?" Without waiting for an answer, she placed the bundle in Marcus's arms. The weight was so slight, yet somehow the heaviest thing he'd ever held. The baby had quieted, his eyes, dark blue like all newborns, blinking up at the strange new world. "Hello," Marcus whispered, his medical training forgotten as he stared in wonder at the tiny face. The nose was Olivia's, the chin unmistakably his own, a perfect blend of them both. "I'm your father." The words felt foreign on his tongue. Father. He was someone's father now. This morning, he'd been Dr. Marcus Delaney, ER physician, married to his career. Now he was a dad. "He needs a name," Olivia called from the bed, her voice tired but happy. Marcus carried the baby back to her, carefully placing him in her arms. The sight of them together, Olivia cradling their son against her chest, created a tightness in his throat he couldn't swallow past. "I've been calling him Julian," she said tentatively. "Julian Thomas, but if you don't like it—" "Julian," Marcus repeated, testing the name. It was strong, dignified. A good name. Julian Thomas Delaney. Olivia looked up, surprised. "Delaney?" "He's my son, too," Marcus said simply. The anger and hurt were still there, bubbling beneath the surface, but they'd been temporarily displaced by something more powerful, an overwhelming, instinctive love for this tiny human who shared his DNA. Dr. Fernandez finished her work and stepped back, removing her gloves. "Everything looks good. We'll monitor you both for the next 24 hours, especially with the preeclampsia history, but I think the worst is behind us." She smiled at the tableau before her. "Congratulations, you three." As the medical team filtered out, leaving them in relative privacy, the storm outside began to subside. The first faint light of dawn seeped through the windows, casting a golden glow over the room. Julian yawned, his tiny mouth forming a perfect O, then settled against Olivia's chest with a contented sigh. The primal rightness of the moment struck Marcus. This was his family, however unexpected, however complicated. But what happened next? In a few hours his shift would end. Olivia would be discharged, presumably to return to Portland with their son. The thought of them leaving, of Julian growing up with Marcus as nothing more than a distant figure, perhaps sending birthday cards and child support checks, was suddenly unbearable. "What now?" he asked, voicing the question that hung between them. Olivia stroked Julian's cheek with one finger. "I don't know," she admitted. "I didn't plan this far ahead." Outside, the rain had stopped. A new day was beginning. The first day of Julian's life and the first day of Marcus's life as a father. Whatever came next would require choices more difficult and consequential than any he'd faced before. Untold stories. 3 days later, Marcus stood at the window of his lakefront apartment, watching waves crash against the shore. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean, but his internal turmoil remained. On the coffee table behind him lay a stack of hastily purchased parenting books alongside a legal pad filled with notes, custody arrangements, child support calculations, visitation schedules, the cold, practical aspects of their situation that needed addressing. His phone chimed with a text from Olivia. "We're settled in at Grand's. Julian is sleeping. Can we talk?" Marcus had taken emergency family leave, a concept that still felt surreal. Family. He had a family now. He texted back a simple yes and his address. An hour later, his doorbell rang. Olivia stood in the hallway, a baby carrier in one hand, a diaper bag slung over her shoulder. She looked exhausted but beautiful, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of a hospital gown. "Come in," Marcus said, stepping aside. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Coffee would be amazing," Olivia replied, setting the carrier on the couch. "Real coffee, not hospital sludge." Marcus busied himself in the kitchen while Olivia checked on Julian, who miraculously remained asleep. The domesticity of the moment wasn't lost on him. In another life, this might have been their everyday reality. "Your place is nice," Olivia commented, accepting the steaming mug he offered. "Different from your old apartment." "I moved after you left," Marcus admitted. Too many memories. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Through the window, a sailboat skimmed across the lake's surface, free and unburdened. "I have so many questions," Marcus finally said, sitting across from her. Olivia nodded. I owe you the full story. She took a deep breath. When I found out I was pregnant, it was right after that huge fight we had about my job offer. Remember? Marcus remembered all too well. They'd shouted things neither meant, then retreated to separate corners to cool off. He'd worked an overnight shift, and when he returned, her note was waiting. I was going to tell you that night, she continued. I had it all planned. Dinner, the pregnancy test as proof. But then we fought, and suddenly all my fears seemed confirmed. She stared into her coffee. You said your career had to come first. That I was being selfish, asking you to compromise. I was talking about moving to Portland, Marcus countered. Not about having a child. I know that now, but at the time, pregnant and emotional, all I heard was that you weren't ready for major. Life changes. She looked up. My mother raised me alone after my father walked out. The thought of you staying out of obligation, growing to resent us both. So you left instead? Denied me the chance to even know my son existed? The hurt in his voice was palpable. I convinced myself it was kinder this way, Olivia admitted, and then time passed. And the longer I waited, the harder it became to reach out. She set down her mug. I was wrong, Marcus. Unforgivably wrong. Julian stirred in his carrier, making small, snuffling noises. Both parents instinctively looked toward him. The program in Portland? Marcus asked. How did that work out? A genuine smile lit Olivia's face. Amazing, actually. We've helped over 200 young mothers complete their education, find stable housing, learn parenting skills. The success stories keep me going on tough days. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. Olivia had always been passionate about helping others, particularly vulnerable young women. It was one of the things he'd loved most about her. And during your pregnancy? You were alone? Olivia's smile faded. Not entirely. My grandmother visited for a month after Julian was born. My colleagues were supportive. But yes, mostly alone. She hesitated. There's been no one else, if that's what you're asking. Not since you. The admission hung in the air between them. Marcus hadn't dated much either. A few half-hearted attempts that never progressed beyond dinner or drinks. Part of him had never fully let go of what they'd had. I've been thinking about what happens next, he said, reaching for the legal pad. I've made some notes about custody arrangements. Marcus, Olivia interrupted. Before we get into legalities, there's something else you should know. She took a deep breath. I've been offered a permanent position here in Chicago, Director of Family Services at Westside Community Center. They've been trying to recruit me for months. Marcus stared at her. You're moving back to Chicago? I'm considering it, she said carefully. It's an incredible opportunity, professionally speaking. And now, with you here, she left the sentence unfinished. Before Marcus could respond, Julian awoke with a hungry cry. Olivia lifted him from the carrier, cradling him against her shoulder. May I? Marcus asked, holding out his arms. Olivia transferred the baby to him, their hands brushing in the exchange. Julian's cries softened as Marcus held him, swaying gently. He knows you already, Olivia observed, her voice thick with emotion. Marcus studied his son's face, the dark lashes, the bow-shaped mouth, the tiny fingers that curled reflexively around his thumb. 3 days old, and already Julian had completely rearranged Marcus's priorities, his vision of the future. I missed so much already, Marcus said quietly. The pregnancy, the first ultrasound, feeling him kick. He looked up at Olivia. I don't want to miss any more. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to be part of his life, a real part, not just weekend visits and holidays. Marcus's voice grew stronger. If you move back to Chicago, we could co-parent, really be present, for him, both of us. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. You'd want that? After what I did? Marcus looked down at Julian, then back at the woman he'd once planned to marry. The anger was still there, but diminished now, overshadowed by the reality of their son. "What you did was wrong," he said honestly, "and it will take time for me to fully forgive that. But Julian deserves both his parents in his life. We can figure out the rest as we go." Outside, the afternoon sun broke through lingering clouds, casting long shadows across the room. Julian had quieted in Marcus's arms, his eyes, which might one day turn brown like his father's, regarding the world with solemn curiosity. "He needs to eat," Olivia said, reaching for the diaper bag. "I brought a bottle." "I'll do it," Marcus offered. "Show me how." As Olivia demonstrated the proper technique for bottle feeding, their hands touching, guiding each other, something shifted between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding, a foundation upon which they might build something new for Julian's sake, and perhaps someday for their own. New beginnings. 6 months later, Marcus pushed a stroller through Lincoln Park, enjoying the crisp autumn air. Julian, bundled against the October chill, babbled happily and reached for falling leaves with chubby fingers. "That's right, buddy. Those are leaves," Marcus said, bending to retrieve a particularly vibrant maple leaf that had drifted into the stroller. "Can you say leaf? Leaf?" Julian responded with a stream of nonsensical sounds that nonetheless made Marcus grin with pride. Every gurgle, every milestone, the first smile, the first time rolling over, the emerging personality, filled him with wonder. He checked his watch. Olivia would be finishing her therapy session soon. They'd meet at the coffee shop near the lake, as they did every Saturday, to exchange Julian and discuss the coming week's schedule. Co-parenting had proven both easier and harder than expected. Easier because they both adored Julian and put his needs first. Harder because unresolved feelings complicated every interaction. Moments of accidental intimacy when their hands brushed during handoffs, old jokes that slipped out unconsciously, the shared history that couldn't be erased. They'd established a routine. Julian stayed with Olivia 4 nights a week and with Marcus for 3. Both had adjusted their work schedules, Marcus switching to regular day shifts in the ER, Olivia arranging flexible hours at the community center. They attended pediatrician appointments together, coordinated on childcare, and maintained a shared digital calendar with Julian's schedule. It wasn't perfect. There were disagreements about sleep training, visits from Olivia's grandmother, Marcus's tendency to buy too many toys. But they were finding their way. As Marcus approached the coffee shop, he spotted Olivia already waiting at an outdoor table, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. She waved, standing to greet them. "There's my big boy," she exclaimed, lifting Julian from the stroller and covering his face with kisses. "Were you good for Daddy?" "He was perfect," Marcus answered, ordering their usual drinks, an oat milk latte for Olivia, black coffee for himself. "He slept through the night again." Olivia's eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? That's the 3rd time this week. He never does. That at my place." "Maybe he likes my mattress better," Marcus teased, settling across from her. "Or maybe he knows Saturday is pancake day." They chatted easily about Julian's week, a possible tooth coming in, his newfound fascination with the ceiling fan, the pediatrician's recommendation to introduce more solid foods. This was the rhythm they'd established, focusing on their son rather than themselves. But today, Olivia seemed distracted, fidgeting with her coffee cup, her eyes avoiding his. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked. "How was therapy?" After moving back to Chicago, Olivia had started seeing a therapist to work through her decision to keep Julian secret and the guilt that followed. It had been her idea, a step toward making amends. Good, actually. Really good. She took a deep breath. "Dr. Powell thinks I'm making progress with my abandonment issues. The stuff with my dad, how it affected my relationships." She finally met his gaze. "Including ours?" Marcus nodded, unsure where this was heading. Julian babbled between them, happily gumming a teething toy. I've been thinking about something, Olivia continued. Would you, would you be open to having dinner? Sometime? Just the two of us? The question caught Marcus off guard. They hadn't spent time alone together since Julian's birth, carefully maintaining boundaries as co-parents but not friends, certainly not anything more. Like a date? He asked cautiously. Like two people who share a child trying to know each. Other again, she clarified. No pressure, no expectations, just conversation without a baby between us. Marcus studied her face, the face he'd once known better than his own, that he'd seen in dreams during the 18 months of her absence, that he now saw reflected in their son's features. The anger that had dominated those early days after. Julian's birth had gradually subsided, replaced by a complex mixture of emotions. Watching Olivia as a mother, patient, loving, determined to do right by their son, had softened something in him. The weekly exchanges, the text messages about Julian's milestones, the necessary cooperation, had built a tentative bridge between them. I'd like that, he finally said. But I have a condition. Olivia tensed visibly. What's that? We talk about everything. No more secrets, no more unilateral decisions. Complete honesty, even when it's difficult. His voice was firm. I can't go through that again, Liv. The old nickname slipped out unconsciously. Olivia's eyes widened slightly at hearing it. Complete honesty, she agreed. I promise. Julian chose that moment to drop his teething toy, letting out an indignant wail. Both parents reached for it simultaneously, their hands colliding. But instead of pulling away, Olivia's fingers lingered against Marcus's for a moment longer than necessary. Thursday evening, she suggested. My grandmother can watch Julian. Marcus nodded. Thursday works. As they finalized the details, a light breeze scattered leaves across the table. Julian reached for one, his tiny face alight with wonder at this simple miracle of nature. Look at him, Olivia murmured. Everything is new. Everything is possible. Marcus watched his son, their son, exploring the world with boundless curiosity. Then he looked at Olivia, seeing not just the woman who had hurt him, but the mother of his child, the person who still knew him better than almost anyone. Perhaps Olivia was right. Perhaps everything was possible. Not a return to what they'd been, that was gone. But something new, built on stronger foundations, honesty, shared purpose, and the fierce love they both felt for the small person they'd created together. The future stretched before them, unwritten. Like autumn giving way to winter and eventually spring, their story wasn't ending but transforming, evolving into something neither could have predicted on that stormy night 6 months ago when fate had brought them back together in the most unexpected way. Julian laughed, a bright, joyful sound that seemed to contain all the promise of tomorrow. And for the first time in a very long time, Marcus allowed himself to hope.